All right. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you all guys here, and welcome to everyone who's joining online as well. What I'm going to be doing this morning is I'm going to teach you loving kindness meditation first, and then I'm going to actually guide you in a loving kindness meditation session. This is a meditation that is designed to help you to eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all the lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike in the mind, because this comes out through your intentions, speech, and actions, and it's going to damage your relationships. It has been damaging your relationships. So in terms of getting to harmonious relationships, you're going to need to transform your mind to be loving and kind in all situations. So loving kindness meditation is going to essentially like fill up your gas tank so you can go out into the world and you can practice those teachings we talked about yesterday, like right intention, right speech, and right action, because now you can be loving and kind in your relationships. And that's what's going to actually transform your relationships. It's not changing other people that's going to lead to harmony in your relationships. It's changing your mind. And as you become more loving and kind, and that's what you put out, you'll see more and more that that's what you're experiencing coming back to you. So I'm going to teach you this meditation, then we're going to actually do it together. So first, let me just show you, these are the 4 meditations that the Buddha taught: breathing mindfulness meditation, loving kindness meditation, meditation to eliminate sexual cravings, and a meditation to realize non-self. And each of these meditations, you're eliminating certain unwholesome qualities in the mind, and you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities in the mind. So with breathing mindfulness meditation, you're eliminating the unwholesome quality of craving, desire, attachment, that longing, yearning, forming your inner feelings on whether you get this thing or not. And then it's cultivating the mindfulness or awareness of mind, so you can be aware in your day-to-day life of what's going on in your own mind, and then you can have concentration. So this is a foundational meditation. And normally students will hang out with this for a few weeks, maybe 4 weeks or so, building this up before you actually start doing loving kindness meditation. But then you start bringing in your loving kindness meditation. This is designed to eliminate all those feelings like anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions that I mentioned. And then it's cultivating this love and kindness in the mind, this love for all beings. What loving kindness is where you have active goodwill towards all beings, a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, but you're not judging beings before you practice loving kindness with them. Sometimes we're taught growing up, like, don't respect others until they respect you. And if you've been taught that, and if everybody practiced that, nobody would be respecting anybody, because you would say, well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. And then they would say, well, I'm not going to respect you until you respect me. Right? So now nobody's respecting anybody. If you did that with your love and your kindness, where you're like, I'm not going to be loving and kind to you until you're loving and kind with me first. Well, if everybody did that, nobody would be loving and kind with anybody. So the way that the natural law of karma works, so whatever you put out, that's what comes back to you. So the more that you're loving and kind in your day-to-day life, in your relationships, you're going to see more and more loving kindness coming back to you. So you're going to need to practice this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well without judgment, this active goodwill towards others without any judgment. You're not judging another person to determine whether they deserve your loving kindness. You're just choosing to be loving kind because you know that it's wise and it's going to be beneficial for your life. And then if someone chooses to be bitter, harsh, and hostile, then you just choose to walk away. That's impermanence. That's all that is, right? You just walk away from that situation. So this is the antidote or the wholesome root. This is the remedy for anger, hatred, and ill will. Like we were talking about yesterday when I just kind of mentioned the 3 poisons of craving, anger, and ignorance. These are the 3 high-level descriptions of what's going on in the unenlightened mind. So the loving kindness meditation is targeting the anger, hatred, and ill will. It's going to help you eliminate the harshness, the bitterness, the hostility, the resentment, the animosity that's in the mind, because all of that is motivating unskillful conduct. Sometimes what people think is they think that they're just going to hold on to this resentment for this one person or this 2 people, and then everyone else in their life they're going to be loving and kind with. This isn't the way it works. If you have anger, hatred, and ill will, or any kind of bitterness or hostility in your mind, it's going to come out in other situations too. Sometimes people hold on to resentment or grudges towards other people because they think that they're getting back at that other person. This is like holding on to a hot coal and trying to burn somebody else, where the only person that's getting burned is yourself, right? So as long as you have any kind of bitterness or harshness or animosity, resentment in the mind, it's just causing harm to your own mind, and it's going to come out in your intentions, speech, and actions when you're interacting with people. So by uprooting this out of the mind, you'll be able to experience the peace and the joy of not having to carry around that hostility and bitterness in the mind. You're going to be learning the Brahma Viharas today. Loving kindness is the very first Brahma Vihara. I'll explain to you guys what those are when you learn them today. Then in terms of the loving kindness and why it's important, as you guys saw in the Eightfold Path yesterday, how the Buddha is guiding you to be able to train your mind to get to this enlightened mental state. Well, there's certain points where loving kindness plugs in to the Eightfold Path. So the Buddha is giving you this tool or this technique to be able to cultivate your mind, to be able to then practice the Eightfold Path, which is then going to lead to enlightenment. So just as a reminder, if you go back to right intention, you remember these three intentions: the intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. The intention of non-ill will is goodwill. That's loving kindness. You need to cultivate the thinking or the thought or the intention of loving kindness towards all beings. But how could you do that if you didn't have a tool or a technique to do it? So that's why you're learning the loving kindness meditation, so that you can then practice that factor of the Eightfold Path. And then if you also remember the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others, that also emanates from this loving kindness. Then if you remember back to right speech, right, the 5 factors of well-spoken speech: speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Well, there again is loving kindness. You can see where this integrates into the Eightfold Path, because when I taught you the Eightfold Path, I shared with you this is a core central teaching that everything else plugs into. So now this loving kindness meditation is plugging into the Eightfold Path to be able to help you cultivate a mind of loving kindness, so that now you can go out into the world and speak with loving kindness. And that's what's going to transform your relationships, because as long as you have the opposite of that, which is the bitterness, the harshness, the hostility, the anger, the hatred, the ill will, if that's coming out in your relationships, you're not going to be able to have harmonious relationships. And we could even say things like right action, choosing not to kill, choosing not to steal, choosing not to have sexual misconduct. That's a practice of loving kindness too. Because if you did those things, that would be ill will towards other beings. To kill another being, to steal from them, or to have sexual misconduct, that would be having ill will towards other beings. So even though it doesn't explicitly call out loving kindness, we could say that a practice of love, of right action, is actually loving kindness as well, including even right livelihood, choosing not to cause harm through the way that you sustain your life. We could say that that's a practice of loving kindness too. So you're going to need loving kindness in your mind in order to be able to motivate and bring into practice the moral conduct, which is ultimately going to transform your mind and transform your relationships. Here's a teaching from the Buddha where he was actually reminding his students before this. He was reminding them about the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. And he was saying to them, he was explaining how it's wise to speak at the proper time. What you say is true, gentle, beneficial, with a mind of loving kindness. But he was also reminding them that other people are going to not speak with you in that way all the time. People are going to speak to you at an improper time. People are going to speak to you with falsehoods. People are going to speak to you with harshness and hostility. People are going to speak to you in unbeneficial ways. And people are going to speak to you with a mind of inner hate. And when he was reminding them of this, that this will occur, this is what he was teaching them. He said, "Herein, monks, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected." Right? You need to get to the point where your mind is unaffected by other people's speech and actions. Because if all it takes for you to become angry is somebody to say something to you and then you automatically get angry, your mind's not free. It's not liberated. It's bound up. All someone needs to do is say something and boom, you're triggered. That's your craving for permanence, wanting people to be a certain way. But if you understand impermanence, Some people are going to speak to you polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, and other people aren't, right? That's the universal truth of impermanence. But if you crave permanence, your mind will get angry when someone speaks to you in a certain way. So the Buddha is reminding his students here that when they speak to you, that's not the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, your mind can remain unaffected. We shall utter no evil words. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare. Let me move this plant. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person with a mind filled with loving kindness. And starting with him, we shall reside enveloping the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, joyful, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. This is how you should train monks. I think that's what it says. It's still in the way, right? So here he's reminding you that, hey, people are going to speak to you in ways that are unkind, right? That's their practice. That's coming from their mind. But you need to get to the point where you have nothing but loving kindness permeating your mind, meaning a genuine interest in seeing that being be well. That's where you can separate the choices and decisions that someone makes from the person themselves, where you can disagree with the speech that they have. Like, you wouldn't speak that way, perhaps. You would choose not to speak that way, but you can still love the person, meaning a genuine interest in seeing them be well, but understanding they're responsible for their own wellness. We'll talk about this tomorrow as well. So loving kindness is what's going to help you to eliminate your anger, hatred, and ill will. You can see that here. These are direct teachings from the Buddha on loving kindness and loving kindness meditation. This first one, he's teaching his son, Rahula. Sometimes people think the Buddha left his family and he never came back. This isn't actually true. He left for 6 years, but then he ended up coming back to that part of the kingdom where he was around his son, his wife, his mother, which was his stepmother. All of these people were ordaining with him and learning how to get to enlightenment. Even his cousins and brothers and brother-in-laws and people like this, all these different people were coming to ordain with him. So here he's teaching his son, Rahula. He says, Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness, for when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. This is how a Buddha speaks. Fully, perfectly enlightened Buddha. Clear, concise, precise, to the point. You don't need to interpret his words. You don't need to figure out what he's telling you and what he's teaching you. He's explaining to you exactly how to get to enlightenment. He's saying loving kindness meditation will eliminate your ill will. That's what eliminates the anger, hatred, ill will. And the reason why he knew that is because that's what worked for him. Whatever he did to be able to get to enlightenment, he knew that that would work for you too. So he just says it very clear, very concise, and very precise. He doesn't make it kludgy where you have to figure it out and interpret what he's saying. It's just very clear of exactly what it takes to get to enlightenment. Then here's another one where he says, loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. This is where you need to then go out into the world and practice loving kindness through your intention, speech, and actions. The meditation is like filling up your gas tank, but then you're going to need to go out into the world through your intention, speech, and actions and be loving and kind. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to the elimination of anger. It's not possible. The meditation is just building the quality in your mind so that then you can go out into the world and practice that on a day-to-day basis. That's where the real transformation is occurring. And that's why you learn right intention, right speech, right action, and right livelihood, so you'll know how to go out into the world and be loving and kind through making wise decisions about your moral conduct. And this is where you'll see your relationships really improving. Here's another one where I'll just set it up for you, that the Buddha, oftentimes we might think that during his lifetime, he was the only one teaching, right? Because if you lived during the lifetime of a Buddha, you'd probably be interested in learning with the Buddha. But not everybody knows who a Buddha is when they're alive, because the Buddha doesn't go around performing a bunch of miracles to convince people that they're an actual Buddha. So there were other people that were teaching besides the Buddha. It wasn't just him. There were other people claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. And those teachers had students So all these different communities in the Buddha's community, they would sometimes get together. The students would all get together and they would talk and they would compare notes. Like, what is your teacher teaching you? What is your teacher teaching you? Probably happens like that today too, when people, interact with each other. So the Buddha's students would sometimes get together with other students of other communities. So the Buddha was advising his students. He says, suppose they ask, meaning those people from the other communities, but what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned? You should answer, the liberation of mind by loving kindness. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of the mind by loving kindness, unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned. So unarisen anger is that mental object of ill will. Like right now, you're not angry, but you have that ill will in your mind. You have that mental object of ill will. It's just unarisen right now because it hasn't been triggered. So the reason why that won't arise is because of loving kindness. But then when your ill will does arise, when your anger does arise, what's going to knock that down is loving kindness. So that's why you need to be attentive to your mind with mindfulness or awareness of mind, so that whenever you see the anger arising, you bring in the loving kindness. That's the right effort, right? Because if you allow your mind to stay wired this way with anger and bitterness and harshness and hostility, it's just going to keep doing that. So as soon as possible, you would like to bring in an antidote with this loving kindness. So if you're noticing at the bodily sensations, great, cut it off there and let it go and bring in the loving kindness. But if your mind actually does form the feeling of anger, hatred, ill will, frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike towards another being, you would like to cut that off and let it go, because that's the unwholesome quality that you're applying right effort towards. And then you're bringing in the wholesome quality of loving kindness. That's right effort as well. So this is the antidote. And the Buddha is explaining it to you very clear here. That's how you get rid of this anger, hatred, and ill will out of your mind. You're essentially rewiring your mind. Because see, in the unenlightened state, we firmly believe that it's other people that are causing our anger. So when something happens, say mom does something, then we don't like that. Our mind is upset or angry or frustrated. We go down this path of anger. It's like a well-worn path of anger. We've got the bushes pushed back, the grass is worn out. We know where that path goes to. It goes to broken relationships. You've experienced that, where you and friends or family members have gotten into arguments and it's ended the relationship. So you know where that path goes to, the hostility and bitterness and harshness. So what you're doing with this loving kindness meditation and going out into the world to practice loving kindness is you're like forging a new path. You're getting out your machete and you're cutting through the bushes and the stickers and the branches, and you're creating this new path. That's why it's challenging, because your mind doesn't want to go down that path, because it's work to go down this path. This is the well-worn path, right? But you got to get out your machete and start cutting through these bushes. And now, as you start going down this path, this becomes the well-worn path, where your mind is just loving and kind. This one grows back. The bushes and the stickers and the branches grow back, and your mind doesn't even look down that path anymore, because it knows that it's unwise to go down that path, because you know where it leads. And more you go down this path. And then your mind gets to the point where it's incapable of being angry. It just doesn't have the ability to be angry. An enlightened being wouldn't even be able to force their mind to be angry. It's just not even possible. So you would like to more and more go down this create this well-worn path of loving kindness. And it's going to be challenging for you. Again, particularly in the relationships where you're the closest. Your parents, your siblings, life partners, children, people like this, that's going to be the hardest, because that's where you have the deepest attachment. But more and more you can work this out and you can go down this path, and you'll experience more and more loving kindness in your mind, but then you'll experience more and more of that coming back in your relationships. There were times where me and my mom, we would have all kinds of problems. Growing up as a child, I had a lot of resentment for my mom because I had so many expectations for her, and I wanted her to be a certain way. And when me and mom were together, it was only a matter of time before fireworks went off. And man, we were arguing about something, right? So mom would pick up the rubber ball of anger and throw it around the room, and I'd pick up the rubber ball of anger and throw it around the room, and next thing you know, we got all these rubber balls bouncing around of anger. So I did that for a while, up to my 20s, my late 20s. But then as I started understanding these teachings, I started changing, because on my early part of my life, I kept trying to change mom. I kept wanting her to change. I kept trying to change her, kept putting expectations on her, trying to force her to change. Didn't work. Right? Just kept making things worse and worse and worse. So eventually I became wise to be able to change my own mind. And I started working on my own mind. And that's where things really changed, because me and mom were like in a log jam, and I had to pull out the anger and the hostility and the bitterness. And as I did, things could flow. So in the past, when we would be talking on the phone and mom would be bitter and harsh and hostile, I'd be bitter and harsh and hostile right back. The next thing you know, we have a big explosion. We'd be hanging up the phone on each other, angry and frustrated with each other. But then once I started training my mind, I started doing things differently. Mom would be bitter and harsh and hostile. She'd pick up the rubber ball and throw it around, and I'd just watch it roll to the corner and lose its energy. I didn't pick it up. Right? So mom would be bitter, harsh, and hostile. And in the past, I'd be bitter and harsh and hostile back, but now I would do things differently. I would say, Mom, I'm so sorry. I know I treated you unkind in the past, and I was really angry, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to get off the phone and let you think about what you just said. I love you so much, Mom. We'll talk another time. Bye-bye. You get off the phone, she's like, what just happened? Like he's supposed to argue with me, right? It's like the mind will short circuit in that situation. So then I wouldn't talk to her for maybe 3 months or 6 months. And then we talk again, and everything be fine for a few months. And next thing you know, here comes the anger. Mom, I love you so much. Our relationship is really important to me. I would really like to get to a point where we're not angry and frustrated at each other anymore. I'm going to get off the phone, Mom. I love you so much. Bye-bye. Right? And I get off the phone, and she was, once again, her mind was like, what's going on here? He's supposed to be yelling at me. So she could learn more and more that it was her bitterness and her hostility, and she needed to work on that because her son wasn't angry anymore, right? So you'll never eliminate anger and hatred in your relationships by you continuing to be angry and hateful. You're going to need to be loving and kind. That's how you extinguish this anger and hatred in your relationships. So slowly but surely, me and mom got to a point where we weren't angry and hostile and bitter with each other at all. The last several years of her life, we never had a bad word between us, where up until I started training my mind, we had all kinds of difficulties, and I kept trying to change her, and it doesn't work. You need to actually change your own mind. Then the other person can see that it's their mind that is still angry, that it's their mind that is still hostile. So you're going to need to get really disciplined with your practice and with your own mind and in your day-to-day life, in your conversations, that you're not just meditating, but you're taking those qualities of your meditation and now you're practicing them in your day-to-day life. So this loving kindness meditation is really helpful if you do it in the morning, because then you can go out in your day with loving kindness and now interact with people with this loving kindness. That doesn't mean you can't do it in the afternoon, you can't do it in the evening, because you surely can, right? Anytime you experience anger or hatred or ill will, you can surely do it. But as a regular practice, doing this in the morning is actually really helpful for you, because then you go out into the world with as much loving kindness built up in your mind as possible. But say you get a phone call at 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m., and you notice the anger coming up, you can do a loving kindness meditation. Surely you could do that. But just as a regular practice, out of your 2 or 3 sessions per day, you might decide to make the morning the loving kindness meditation, because that's going to help you to go out into the world and practice being loving and kind in all your conversations and relationships. It's going to support you in practicing right intention, right speech, and right action, and be able to now put in the moral conduct so that you can improve the way your mind's functioning and your relationships as well. So do you guys have any questions on any of this stuff before I teach you how to actually do loving kindness meditation? No questions? You have one? Yeah, feel free.
Just out of curiosity, so with your mom, how, I guess I want to know, how would you respond? Like, in my family likes to talk about politics, and we all have a very different view. And I have some people in my family that's like their life and death thing. But I don't like talking about that because it gets us in an argument. How do you you set a boundary, but still remain loving when they don't listen to the boundary.
Boundaries are just another word for a craving, desire, attachment. That's like going around the world trying to convince other people to do things your way. So even though lots of people talk about boundaries in the world today, that'll never lead to your enlightenment. This is where you'll see things that are like actually not true about the way people practice in the world. So instead of having a boundary that you're trying to teach other people how to interact with you, and then when they cross a boundary, maybe the mind's upset or angry, instead of doing that, just make wise decisions for yourself of knowing what it is that you would like to be able to do. So say you know that you don't like to talk about politics. When your family starts talking about politics, just get up and walk out. Walk out of the room. Or you could try to change the subject. You could try to do that. But typically people are so much craving and desire with politics, it's not going to work. So it's better to just get up and walk out. And then you're not doing it in protest. You're not doing it like hostile. You just politely just kind of get up and excuse yourself out of the room. And then if they would like to talk about politics, they talk about politics. But putting a boundary out there is like putting an expectation on them of what you want them to talk about. But if they would like to talk about politics, up to them. That's their choice. You're wise to not talk about that in those kinds of situations, because oftentimes people have such craving and desire. It's like a fight to death because each other is trying to convince the other one to agree with them, where it's better to just not even talk about those kinds of things oftentimes. So that's what you would like to do, is just choose like, okay, they're going to talk about politics. I'm not interested, and I'm going to walk away, rather than trying to tell them what they should or shouldn't be talking about. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me see if we have any questions online. For those of you guys on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you guys are welcome to ask questions by putting that into the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. All right, I don't see any questions online. Okay, so now I'm going to teach you guys how to actually do loving kindness meditation. We start this with the chanting, just like with the breathing mindfulness meditation to ease the mind into meditation. Then you do a short session of breathing mindfulness meditation, just a few minutes. If you're doing this on your own, maybe like 3 minutes or 5 minutes of breathing mindfulness meditation. I'm going to be guiding you for the breathing mindfulness, and then afterwards there's going to be a short period of time of quietness. But then you're going to hear me come back in with these affirmations of may I be peaceful. And when you hear me say that, you would like to say it in your own mind on the out breath. Then you're going to hear me say, may I be safe. Again, you say that in your own mind on the out breath. Then may I be well, right? And then again, in your own mind on the out breath, may I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering it causes, right? So this is starting with I, because it would be very challenging for you to have loving kindness for others if you don't know how to love yourself. So you need to be able to start with this being who you are and cultivate loving kindness for this being. And now once you do that, you go through expansive rings where you get wider and wider and wider until eventually you get to all beings. Now, typically you have about 6 to 8 rings. This is just a learning device here. This is just a visual aid. We're not going to do it like this, but we're going to structure it like this. So we're going to start with I. We're going to go through a bunch of different rings, and then we're going to eventually get to all beings. And the way that you structure this is you usually start with maybe a ring or two of people that you currently have loving kindness for, and you kind of bubble that up. Then you go to a ring or two of people that you're more neutral about. You don't hate them, but you don't exactly love them either. Maybe like neighbors or coworkers or something like that. But then you would like to go to a ring or two of people you do have anger and hatred towards, right? Maybe it's somebody that's currently in your life or someone long gone in the past, someone that's even dead or that you'll never even see again. If you're holding on to anger and hatred in your mind, you need to be able to release that. So while I'm going to be doing these affirmations with general statements like, may my friends, family, coworkers, and neighbors be peaceful and safe, well, free of discontentedness. When you're doing this on your own, you would actually like to use the individual's name. So if there's someone named Bob or Barbara or Susie that's in your life or that was in the past, you would like to use that when you're doing this on your own. May Bob be peaceful. safe, well, and free of discontentedness, right? You would like to actually use the individual's name, or you can use a group of names. If you hate all politicians, if you hate police officers, if you hate lawyers and accountants or taxi drivers or whatever it is, you can actually use groups of people too this way. So you're going to need to customize this on your own. But for me, I'm going to do it in a way that can guide all of you guys and that can apply to everybody. But when you do this on your own outside of class, you're going to need to customize it, because your mind, you know the people that you have anger towards, and you're going to need to uproot that out of your mind, right? So you're going to need to customize this. Now, when you hear me doing this, I'm going to say things like, may mom and dad be peaceful, right? May mom and dad be safe, free of discontentedness, and so forth. This is not trying to change mom and dad. We're not trying to change them through our meditation. It's not possible to change other people through your meditation. If you could change other people through your meditation, there'd be no such thing as murders or rapes or prisons or anything, because we would just all sit down, meditate, and just change everybody. Right? It's not possible to change others through your meditation. So we're not trying to change mom and dad. And we're also not trying to invoke some kind of special power on behalf of mom and dad to change mom and dad. That's not what meditation is. Meditation is actually to change your mind, to transform your mind, to eliminate unwholesome qualities and cultivate certain wholesome qualities, so that now when you're around mom and dad, you can be more loving and kind. And that's what's going to improve your relationships, because you're putting out more loving kindness in your relationships. That's what you're going to experience coming back to you. So when we're doing these affirmations or these phrases, understand that this is for your mind. It's not for other people. Okay. But other people will benefit because you're being more loving and kind. After the loving kindness meditation, we're going to go back to breathing mindfulness meditation, and then we're going to come out of that with some chanting. And then that's where I'll share some more things with you guys. So the way that I think about this is it's kind of like a loving kindness sandwich, where you've got loving kindness in the middle, and you've got breathing mindfulness meditation like the lettuce and tomato, and then the bread holding it all together. That's the chanting. Okay. So this is the structure that you can use, and you use up to 6 to 8 rings, and you like to customize this. Someone might show up in your meditation for a few weeks, and then after that, maybe you take them out and you interchange it with someone else. There were times where, like when I was in business and the landlord came into one of our facilities, got up in my face, yelling and hollering, cussing, threatening to kill me in front of my customers and my employees, he went on my meditation for a little while, right? Just to make sure that my mind didn't have any anger or hatred towards him. I'd be on my way to work sometimes. Somebody would cut me off in traffic. They might have shown up in my meditation for a little while. Didn't even know their name. May that person who cut me off in traffic this morning be peaceful, right? Or maybe there was an employee or a customer that I noticed my mind had anger and hatred towards. I would include them in the meditation for 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 weeks until I noticed that anger and hatred wasn't there any longer, right? So with mom, though, because I had so much built up resentment, she was in there for a good 6 months, right? Before I started switching things around, right? And I also had a lot of negative self-talk in my mind. So of course, having this I in there, that's what's going to help you with that, is eliminate that diminishing, degrading self-talk that you might have in your own mind. This is going to help you to be able to do that by using this, may I be peaceful, safe, well, and free of discontentedness. Okay, so I'm going to do this with you guys and guide you. And then from now on, for the rest of the course, we're going to be doing this each morning. So you guys get a chance to practice the loving kindness meditation and see the impact that it can have for you just in this short period of time. So do you guys have any questions on the meditation before we do it? No questions? You have a question, Joyce? No? Okay. Let me see if we have anything here. Okay, I don't see anything online either. Okay, so I'm going to guide you in this meditation. Feel free to chant along if you like. You guys already know that. And then I'm going to come in with the breathing mindfulness meditation, back to the loving kindness, back or into the loving kindness, back to the breathing mindfulness, and then back out with the chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakewa Potang Mahakewanang Apiwateyami Sawakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Iti piso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho vicacaranang sammuno sakhato rokavitu Anutero purisa Dhammasati satatawa manusanang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May my family, friends, co-workers, and neighbors all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have caused me harm be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May all beings be safe. May all beings be well. May all beings be free of discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมากวาโหตังมากวันหังอภิวาเตมิสวากขาโตมากวัตตาตัมโมดามังนามาสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you'd like to slowly make your way out of meditation. So this is loving kindness meditation. This is what's going to help you to eliminate all the anger, hatred, ill will, all those lesser versions, frustration, agitation, annoyance, even the slightest dislike. That dislike that you have towards other people is actually coming from your own expectations. You expect people to be a certain way. And when they meet those expectations, you're happy and you like them. But when they don't do what you want them to do, you dislike them, right? So oftentimes we think dislike is coming from the other person, but it's actually coming from your own mind, and you can transform all of that. So not only is it going to transform your mind away from all of that, but it's also going to eliminate that negative self-talk, that inner dialogue. If you have that degrading, diminishing inner dialogue where you're speaking to yourself that way, this is going to eliminate that for you. You're just going to need to be consistent with it. Like I mentioned, if you do this in the morning, that's ideal, but that doesn't mean you can't do it at other times during your day too, because you can do it in the afternoon or the evenings as well. The Buddha gives a great analogy about the wearing away of anger, hatred, and ill will, really all of these fetters, but he gives this great analogy specifically about ill will. He talks about if you had a digging tool and you were digging with this tool and it has a wooden handle and you were digging with this tool every day. He says that each day you're going to be wearing away wood from this handle, and you're not going to know how much wood you're wearing away from the handle every day. But when it's completely exhausted and you need to replace the handle, he says you're going to know that, right? And he says it's the same thing with these pollutions, that each day you're not going to know how much of the anger, hatred, ill will you're wearing away, but when it's completely gone, you're going to know that, because it'll be 6 months, a year, 2 years. You haven't been arguing with mom or dad. You haven't been upset or angry or frustrated with your children or your life partner or people around you. So each day when you're meditating with loving kindness meditation and you're going out into the world practicing to be loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, you're not going to know how much anger and hatred you're wearing away. But when it's completely gone in each one of these relationships, you're going to know that, because it'll be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years. No anger, no frustration, not even the slightest dislike towards other beings. So you're going to know when it's completely exhausted. Keep in mind, you're going to need to customize this as you go. Here, I just did some affirmations and phrases that apply to all of us, but you're going to need to customize this based on individuals that you're interacting with, but also maybe people in the past. If you have an ex-boyfriend or an ex-girlfriend or husband or wife or something like this that's long in the past, you may not ever see them again. You're going to need to put them into your meditation. Maybe even people that have passed away. If you've had family members that have died and you still have anger and hatred in your mind towards them, you're going to need to put them in your meditation as well. Now, if you notice, when I did this meditation, I said, may all those who have harmed me be peaceful, and may all those who I have harmed be peaceful, right? Remember, when we're talking about harm, we're talking about harm to the physical body, material possessions, or the reputation, because you can't cause other people to be discontent. Just like you cause your mind to be angry and frustrated and agitated, it's your own mind that's causing that because of craving, desire, attachment. If other people are getting angry and frustrated, you're not causing that. No matter how much they blame you, no matter how much they try to convince you that you're the one who's causing them to experience a certain feeling, it's physically impossible for you to cause somebody else a feeling. If that was possible, nobody would ever be able to get to enlightenment, including the Buddha, because someone would just walk up to him, say something, and he'd be angry, right? It's not the outside world that's causing this anger and frustration and all these other feelings, because then nobody would ever be able to get to enlightenment, right? It's not the outside world. It's actually what's going on in your inner mind. So when we talk about may all those who have caused me harm be peaceful, that's people that have caused you physical harm, caused harm to your material possessions or your reputation, because you could easily be holding on to resentment or hostility towards those people, right? Because the mind perceives this painful feelings that you have in your mind as having came from them. But then also sometimes people can feel guilty or shameful for the people that you have harmed. If you've harmed people physically or their material possessions, or you've caused harm to their reputation, you might have guilt or shame or even fear in your mind based on those kinds of things. So you can actually eliminate that through training of your mind, where you don't have that any longer and you can let go. Because at that time, whenever you caused that harm, you didn't have the same wisdom that you have now. So you can't beat yourself up today for wisdom that you didn't have yesterday. Right? Sometimes we do things unwisely and we see the results that that produces, and that actually helps us to cultivate wisdom. It makes us a better person. So you can't beat yourself up for things that you didn't know yesterday. Right now, today, if you have wisdom and you look back at that situation and you're like, I would never do that again. I wouldn't do it that way if I was ever in that same situation. That's wisdom that you've cultivated, and you see that what you did in the past was unwise. But no need to feel guilty about not having that wisdom a week ago, a year ago, 10 years ago. No need to have guilt or shame or fear in your mind for wisdom that you didn't have. So sure, we've all caused harm. None of us were perfect when we were born. None of us. That's the thing about some people. They think that Jesus was born perfect, right? And they think that that's what they should do, is they should be perfect their entire life. It's not possible for anyone to be perfect, because Jesus wasn't perfect from birth. So you can't be perfect from birth either, right? The Buddha wasn't perfect from when he was born, but he became perfect by training his mind. And he got to the point where he wasn't causing harm to others. So you're not a perfect being yet, but that's what you're in the process of doing as you purify your mind and you get closer and closer to enlightenment. You won't think of yourself as perfect, because that would be conceits or ego, but you'll just know that you're not causing any harm to other beings. So do you guys have any questions on loving kindness meditation? Anything you guys would like to ask? Yep. For those of you guys online, you can put this into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like.
Mr. David, there's people in my life that are dead to me. I've hurt them, they've hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about it. If I saw him on the street, we would keep it moving. I don't care. Like it doesn't, I don't think about it. I don't know if this is something that I've just pushed away, or if this even matters. If these people even matter to me.
Do you have any anger or hatred towards them?
No.
Do you have even the slightest annoyance or frustration?
If other people talk about them.
Okay, so it's still there. You're going to need to have them in your loving kindness meditation. Another good litmus test is if they show up to your door, they knocked on your door, and they said, hey, my car broke down 2 blocks away. Can you come help me? And you slam the door in their face. Yeah, there's still frustration and anger there. So you need to liberate the mind of that, because as long as you carry it around, it's going to be heavy in the mind, and it's going to come out in other situations. It's not just towards them that you have this, that the mental object of ill will is still there, so it can come out in other situations too. So you're going to need to include them in your meditation for a period of time. It sounds like it's significantly diminished, so therefore you're probably not going to need to have them in there for very long, but you are going to need to have them in there, because on one side, it sounds like you don't care, right? You said you don't care. So having a loving kindness for someone, you will care about them. You will have a genuine interest in seeing them be well. So your mind's not yet in the middle with those individuals. So this is what's going to help you to bring it to the middle.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 questions. So the first question, when we go through the affirmations, do we say, you said we say the people's name instead of saying like we could think of specific people.
Mm-hmm.
Can you say more than one at a time?
Sure, you can. Yeah, like you can do as many as you like. In terms of the rings, you would like to do 6 or 8. That's about what your mind can manage. But if you like to name Bobby, Susie, Rebecca, like in all one ring, you could do it that way too. Or a group of people, like police officers, lawyers, politicians, things like this.
And then my other question kind of goes back. I meant to ask earlier, but I forgot. How you were saying to be loving and kind in people's own emotions are their own emotions, that we can't upset them.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had a couple people in my life tell me, well, you know how I am, so you should be more careful. Not like today I had somebody tell me, well, you kind of know what triggers me, so you should be more careful and mindful of what to say. And to me, I don't know, to me, I realize if I get triggered by somebody, I'm not going to ask them to change their behavior so it doesn't trigger me. I'm going to ask myself, okay, why is this triggering me? What do I need to do about it? But I've had a couple people tell me like, well, you should know better. You're my close friend not to do these things. But it's like, to me, that isn't that walking on eggshells?
Yeah. Yeah. So what you are doing is when you see something that triggers you, you look inward and figure out what's the craving, desire, attachment, and let me get rid of that. They're not doing that. They're expecting people around them to function differently. And this isn't going to lead to their peace and their joy. This is them putting an expectation on someone and trying to control the other person to do things their way. Because that's what I shared with you. When people don't know the 4 noble truths, they will either push away, be bitter, harsh, and hostile, or they'll put expectations on people and try to control them. And that's what they're doing, is they're putting an expectation on you to try to control you. So I'm going to give you a story about this so you can see how I approach these things. So one time, me and my son, we were sitting at our table where we eat, and at this particular time in our life, my wife was doing pretty much all the dishes. We weren't washing dishes at that time, and she came downstairs and she saw that we had these 2 cups that we were drinking water. We were sitting at the table and we were talking, just having conversation. We had these 2 cups, and she came downstairs and she's like, why do you guys have all these cups? She's like, why don't you put them in the sink, and you always leave them on the table, and blah, 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 blah. And she just went off and walked away. And we just looked at each other, and I said, you know what we need to do, right? He said, yep, I sure do. Because helped him to be able to see how to handle these situations. So we went and got every single cup we could find in the house, and we put them everywhere. We put them on the floor, we put them on the end table, we put them on the sofa, on the TV, we put them everywhere. We had probably like 20, 30 cups all over the house. And then about an hour or two later, she came downstairs and she looked and she looked and she looked, and you could see her mind was rewiring, and then she just stayed quiet and she walked away. Right? So if we would have buckled to her aggression and her hostility and just tried to do things her way, it wasn't going to just be the cups. It was going to be the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So instead, what we did is the most loving and kind thing we could do and the most compassionate thing we could do, which is create an environment that allowed her to eliminate her craving. Because now, no matter how many cups are around, she's completely peaceful. Where before, she had this condition that if there's no cups on the table, I'll be happy. But if there's cups on the table, I can't be happy. So we helped her out of loving kindness and compassion to be able to get rid of this attachment. So the last thing you're interested in doing is feeding somebody's expectations and their cravings, because it's like feeding a monster, and that monster is just going to get bigger because now they're going to want you to do this and this and this and this and this and this. Another way that I learned this is that early in life, when I was about 17, I was spending a lot of time with my guy friends, and my family came to me and they said, "Hey, David, you're spending too much time with your friends. We think you should have a girlfriend." And I thought about it for a couple of months, and I was like, okay, let me go get a girlfriend. So I went and got a girlfriend, started spending time with her. And then my family came to me and they said, "We think you're spending too much time with your girlfriend. You should spend time with us." And I was like, man, you can't make these people happy, right? Because they have a certain expectation. You work to get to that. They're happy temporarily. Yeah. And then they changes, right? So this is what's going to happen with your friends. If you try to feed that expectation, it's just going to keep changing. Next thing you know, you got this whole list of things, and they can only be happy when you do things their way. This is the mind's craving, desire, attachment, the selfishness. And what you would like to do is get away from that. And you would like to get to the point where you're not feeding people's cravings, desires, attachments, because they're just going to get bigger, and it's going to cause more and more complications in your day-to-day life. So you need to be really skillful about how you do these kinds of things so you don't cause harm. So like what we did with my wife, we didn't cause her any harm. We didn't cause harm to her physical body. We didn't cause harm to her material possessions. We didn't cause harm to her reputation. We just made a certain choice that provided her an environment to be able to get rid of her craving, desire, attachment. And now her mind was able to let go. And now she can be peaceful and joyful no matter what.
So yours is like with the physical situation, but how would you respond like to my friend saying, "Well, you should know what triggers me and not do it"?
What exactly was it?
It was funny because it was after the dissolving ego class, and we were driving, and she was driving in the middle of the lane. So I asked her once, she didn't say anything. So I thought she didn't hear me. I asked her again, and she started like kind of yelling at me and cursing, and I don't respond well to that. So I'm not gonna lie, I got a little bit in my ego, and I was like, the more you talk to me like that, the louder I'm gonna get. And I know that was my fault because she started shushing me, telling me stop talking and telling me like, shut up, basically. And those are my triggers, which I recognize now. But we talked this morning, and she was just like, I was telling my friend, and she's like, "Yeah, you should just know what automatically," like, I'm like, well, I'm like, you got to realize I'm in a new country. I don't know the laws. I didn't know that was going to make you feel like, because she told me how it made her feel, like you're not good enough. I was just asking out of pure curiosity because I notice a lot of people drive here in the middle of the lane. You know, in the States, we don't do that. And I told her, like, you know, I'm still learning you. I don't know you as well as you think. I'm still learning you, and learning how to work with you. Okay. So that was my response.
So what I would have done is, in the moment, you asked her a question like, why are you driving in the middle of the lane? Right? And then she starts getting upset and angry and frustrated. And then she starts being bitter and harsh and hostile. I would have just walked away. Right? Because then slowly but surely she realizes when people are bitter, when she's bitter, harsh, and hostile, people don't want to be around her. And that's her karma. That's the results of her decisions. So I would have just walked away from that situation. And then, maybe in the future, spend time with her again. Then if we were talking and she said, well, you know how I am, you shouldn't have said that because you know how I am, and that triggered me. I would have said, oh, do you think I'm responsible to control your mind? And or are you responsible to control your mind? I would just ask her a question, because otherwise you would be giving her unsolicited guidance. But by asking her a question, she gets to teach herself. So if you say, oh, am I the one who's responsible? And you say it politely with loving kindness, using the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. You say, am I responsible for controlling your mind? And she's going to say whatever she says. She's probably going to say no, but you should know, you shouldn't have said that, you shouldn't have said that. Okay, so is that the kind of friendship that we're going to have, that you're going to tell me the way that I should interact with you, and you're going to try to expect me to do things a certain way? And if she says, yeah, you're going to need to do things, then I would say, well, I'm not interested in a relationship like that, and I'm just going to move on, right? And I would just move on, because otherwise it's going to be one thing after another, after another, after another, and it's not going to be healthy. But sometimes by asking them these questions and they arise wisdom, they can see how unwise they're being, and then it might even be like, oh yeah, you're right. I shouldn't put that expectation on you. I'm going to work on controlling my mind. I'm sorry. Sometimes they will do it that way. That's another thing you can do. You can speak about yourself, rather, because you can't give unsolicited guidance, right? If you start telling her what she should or shouldn't be doing in life, her ego is going to arise and it's going to be a big conflict. So when someone starts putting expectations on you, you can say things like, I understand. I just like to let you know that when I'm in relationships with people, I don't put expectations on them, and I don't attempt to try to control what they do. So I would just let you know that you're not going to see those kinds of things from me where I put expectations on people, because I've learned over time that if I put expectations on people, it's unwise and it produces unwholesome results. And they're going to be thinking, because you're not giving them any unsolicited guidance. You're just talking to them about what you choose to do. And then if they choose to learn the lesson that's there for them to learn, then they're choosing to learn it. But you need to be really skillful when you do these things, that you're speaking at the proper time, that your mind's not frustrated, that they're not frustrated and angry, that you're not interrupting, that you speak the truth, you speak gentle, you speak beneficially, and with a mind of loving kindness. So these are the kinds of things you can do skillfully to be able to help this person to see something that they're not seeing. Mm-hmm. You're just going to say thank you. That's all right. That's all right. Someone else have a question? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Teacher, I would like to ask you questions about the cups, about your example about cups. Like you told our situation from your side, but I would like to ask questions about from side of your wife. Like you left your house at 8 o'clock and everything. Maybe you answer this question. I'm sorry if I'm asking again. Like when you left your house, everything was in order, but you come back and everything in mess. And people if I'm I order, and people which are living, they don't care about that. They always leave a house a mess. And also my friend has this situation now. She works. She lives alone with 2 sons, teenager son, and 2 dogs, and she just work and after when she came to home, it's always mess, and they also created some troubles. Last week they broken some heater, and they didn't fix it. They didn't care how, they didn't help her at home. It's quite stressful, right? When you come from work, you want to rest, but you have to do double job. But when you put much more cups around, your wife have to clean it up, right? Spend your energy. What your wife have to do in this situation, right? She have to loving mess, or she have move on from this situation, or I don't understand.
My wife didn't have to clean that up. That was us putting the cups out. And then once she came down and she let go of her attachment, we cleaned it up. Right. So at that time, she used to wash all the dishes. And what she was asking us to do, but she was doing it in a very argumentative and hostile way, is every time we have a glass of water to put it in the sink. Whereas if we did that, there would be 8 or 10 glasses for me, 8 or 10 glasses for my son, 8 or 10 glasses from her. And we were just using one glass for 5-10 days so that she wouldn't have to wash so many glasses. That's the reason why we were having our glasses on the table. But she didn't understand that. She didn't take the time to ask or anything like that. She was just getting angry and hostile and bitter and wanting us to do it her way. So we were doing something out of loving kindness and compassion by leaving just one cup and using one cup for 5 or 10 days. But her mind was angry. She wanted it done a different way. So in this situation, we knew that she had a craving, desire, attachment. So that's why we put the cups everywhere, to be able to train her mind and help her, to provide her an opportunity to be able to let go of her attachment. And then once we saw she let go of her attachment, then we put the cups away. And now we leave cups on the table for 5-10 days, and she doesn't have any problem at all. She's not upset. She's not angry or anything. So it's something that we did to be able to help her to let her craving go. Whereas if we would have did what she wanted us to do, she would have never let go of her craving, because we would have just been, going around, doing everything her way. So it's not that you're trying to get people to do things your way. It's that when you're in relationships and you see that they have anger and hostility and bitterness, the last thing you're interested in doing is doing things the way the other person wants and expects, because then it's just going to produce more expectations. So using your example, I've taught my son to be tidy and to be neat and clean, but obviously he's not neat and clean all the time, right? So sometimes I'm gone like this at the temple for 6 hours, 8 hours. Sometimes on Sundays, I'm gone all day long from 8 a.m. in the morning, 7 a.m. in the morning until 11, 12 o'clock at night. And he's at home all day by himself, right? And he's only 13 years old, so he doesn't necessarily make things very clean. So when I come back home, things aren't usually very clean, right? But he's learned that I've taught him to be clean. So now when I come home and I see a big mess, instead of going to him and yelling and hollering at him, which would be unwise, I don't feel stress when I see the house is messy. I just know that it needs to be clean. So what I'll do is I'll go get him. I'll say, Bailan, come downstairs. And he's like, why? And I say, you'll see when you get here. So when he comes downstairs, the area that he's hanging out in the living room, I'll say, what are you going to do with all of this? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, is this the way you're going to leave this? And he's like, no, I should probably clean that up. I'm like, all right, perfect. Right. So I'm not forcing him, I'm not controlling him, I'm not putting my expectations on him. I'm not doing it in a bitter and harsh and hostile way. I'm just asking him questions. And then he's making a choice to clean it up. And then the other day I came home and of course he's a young boy. So he's got the toilet seat down and urine all over the seat. And I walk into the bathroom and I'm like, okay. And I go and get him and I say, hey, Bailan, come here into the bathroom. And he's like, what? And I was like, do you see what you've done here? Because he knows he was home all day by himself. And I was like, do you see what you've done here? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, well, what do you think would be wise to do here? And he's like, I'm going to clean it up. And I was like, oh, perfect. I was like, there's the cleaning supplies there. I was like, don't just clean the toilet seat, but you're going to need to clean the floor too, because some of that urine went all over the floor. So I'm just there to guide him and show him what he needs to do. But then he's making the choice to do it. Right. So this is the way you can handle it when your mind is calm, when you're peaceful. You understand that you're just guiding the people and helping them to be able to see. But when you're stressed, when you come home, that's because the mind has a craving. And now it might yell and holler and scream at somebody to be able to do things a certain way. So that's what my wife was doing. She was being bitter and harsh and hostile. And we needed to create an opportunity for her to let that go, because then her mind could be peaceful all the time. Mm-hmm.
I ask about the cups.
Mm-hmm.
What would it be if I do it, if I am my family,
Mm-hmm.
and I would do it with one of my relatives? They are not on the path to enlightenment, so they don't know that it's their own mind and so
Mm-hmm.
on. Would it be the same? Still can do it, or?
Yeah, it can still work in those situations. It's just sometimes a lot more challenging for them. You know, my wife, this was many years ago, by the way. I haven't seen her angry or frustrated for many years because I've done these kinds of things with her regularly. So she doesn't get angry or frustrated anymore. Like, it's been a very long time since I've seen any of this out of her. But my wife, she meditates, she learns the teachings of the Buddha. She reads the teachings of the Buddha. She has a teacher that she learns from and so forth. So she's actively on the path. But even for someone who's not on the path, these kinds of things work as well. It'll just be more challenging for them. You might have to do it more than once. So with my wife, I did it one time and it worked and it was done and it was over with because her mind was able to let go. But for someone who's not on the path, you might need to do it more than once in order to be able to help them with their mind. So you can still do these kinds of things, but you need to be skillful to the point where you know that you're not causing any harm, right? So I knew that I wasn't causing any harm. So no harm was going to come to me in that situation. I didn't cause harm to her physical body, to her material possessions, to her reputation. So I know the natural law of karma really well. And I know that no harm was going to come to me, right? And if she was going to be bitter and harsh and hostile that second time that she came down, my mind's unaffected. When someone is bitter and harsh and hostile, my mind's unaffected because I know that's coming from them. It's not coming from me. So even if she was bitter, harsh, and hostile, that's not affecting this mind whatsoever. So that's why when you start doing these things, you're going to need to make sure you're not attached to the other person. Because if they become upset and angry, you might feel like you've done something wrong. Where I know that by putting all those glasses around like that, I haven't done anything unwise in this situation. And if she became bitter and harsh and hostile, it was her own mind that was doing that. So yeah.
So approximately I do it.
Mm-hmm.
These relatives get angry again.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, what is that? Why are you doing this? You want to? Maybe she would say, you want to make joke of me. You want to trigger me.
No.
But it would look like that, right? If I put everywhere cups, who does that, right?
That's their perception. They're forming a perception at that point.
But my intention was to help her to let go.
Mm-hmm.
And so I intentionally put all the cups around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This isn't your number one goal on the path to enlightenment, to go around and do these kinds of things. But when you're living in a home, in our case with mom, with a wife, we're going to have a long-term relationship here. We're having nothing but loving kindness and compassion towards her. And we would like to see her get to enlightenment. So we're interested in doing these kinds of things, right? If I came to your house and I noticed that your mom was doing this and I was only living there for 3 days or 5 days, I wouldn't do this. Right? It's not something that I would do. But for someone like my wife that I'm going to be living with long term, yeah, I would like to do this kind of thing because I would like to see her get to enlightenment. Now, if your mom had invited me to come to her house and she's a student of mine and she's learning from me and she's interested in getting to enlightenment, sure, I would do this. Because oftentimes when students are inviting me to go teach, and I'm living in their home for a week or 2 or 3 or 4, I'll see some of their attachments and I'll do things intentionally to be able to help them let go of their attachment. One time somebody invited me to go teach and I went and stayed at their house for like 2 or 3 weeks, and I noticed their refrigerator was very well organized. Every single thing in their refrigerator, the labels were all facing forward. Everything was perfectly clean and everything. So I asked them, I said, because they told me like, hey, you can go in the refrigerator and make some whatever you would like to make. And I was like, oh, sweet. I see you got some peanut butter and jelly. I haven't had peanut butter and jelly in a long time. I was like, can I make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? They're like, sure, go ahead. So I took out the peanut butter and jelly, made my peanut butter and jelly. And I said, does your refrigerator require me to put things back in a certain place? And the husband started busting out laughing, right? Because the wife obviously was the one who had this attachment, and he started busting out laughing. And they were like, no, she said, you can put everything anywhere you'd like. And I said, okay, perfect. So then I kind of rearranged things in her refrigerator and put them in different places. And then that was it, right? I moved on with my day. So I do these things with students who are learning. But if it was your mom who wasn't learning from me, I wouldn't do these things myself. But if you're going to be living with your mom and you have this compassion for your mom to be able to see her improve, you can do these things. And if she says things like, what are you doing here? Are you trying to trigger me? You just say, no, I'm not trying to do that.
And move and go away, or what?
Yeah, you can. Each situation you're going to handle differently, right? I can't give you a recipe of exactly how to handle each situation because there's no permanent answer here. But when someone asks you a question, you just answer it, right? There was a time where Bailan had a teacher and she was yelling and hollering at the children. Bailan was telling me about this. And I sent an email to the teacher and I was asking her about this, and I was doing this in a skillful way. I said, I understand that there's been some situations where you've been harsh with the children in the way that you're talking to them. And I said, is this a way that you would advise to be able to talk to children? Is this what you would recommend as a teacher? And then, she wrote back to me. And then eventually the principal contacted me because they were not happy that I had asked them this question. And the principal said to me, she said, I know exactly what you're doing. She was like really angry with me. And I said, I don't think you know what I'm doing, because if you knew what I was doing, you would support me. Right? Because what I was doing was trying to help this teacher to see something, but I needed to do it in a skillful way. And sometimes people get angry and bitter and harsh and hostile with you, but you need to be able to have enough composure and enough wisdom to not be upset in those situations and just answer the question. So when this principal was bitter and harsh and hostile with me and saying, I know what you're doing and you need to stop doing this and I was like, I don't think you know what I'm doing, because if you did, you would support me in what I'm doing. Because what I was doing was trying to help this teacher to be able to see something that was unwise, and I was just doing it through asking questions. That's all I was doing. And I hadn't caused any harm. But in their mind, their cravings, desires, attachments, it was causing their mind to be upset, and they didn't understand that. So you're going to be in situations sometimes where if you choose to do these kinds of things, where people are going to get upset. But I wouldn't suggest you do these things until you're prepared to deal with it, because people are going to be upset in some situations. And if you're not prepared to deal with it, it's not going to be good for your practice. So this isn't your first priority to go out into the world and do these kinds of things in situations. But there are situations like when you're living with someone that it would be wise for you to do these kinds of things. And in the situation with my son's school, he had just started learning with this teacher and he was going to be with her all year long. So I actually helped her in this situation. And from what I found out after our conversation, she started being much more loving and kind to her students, where prior to me talking to her, she had a reputation of being bitter and harsh and hostile to her students. And the students didn't like her. And then after I had this conversation with her over email, apparently she became much more loving and kind, and the students were just really enjoyed being around her, and she had a much better success in her classes. And she doesn't know what I was doing in that situation. The principal doesn't know what I was doing, but I didn't need credit for it. I didn't want anything. Just out of loving kindness and compassion for this teacher, I chose to do this and help. And then when there was blowback and the principal was upset with me, it didn't affect my mind. Mm-hmm.
Let's say my parents or maybe my sister, they get upset if I let cups somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm just visiting them for 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Would it then be different because I'm not living in this house? They are not my cups, and just taking them and putting them everywhere to help them?
It depends how much work and effort you would like to put into helping your family. That's what it comes down to. And it comes down to how skillful you can be, right? Because the fact that you're asking me all these questions, you don't understand yet, how to do these kinds of things. You really need to see people doing it to be able to learn it. Because what I would do in that situation, if sister was trying to dictate to me where I should put my cup on the table, I'd be like, oh, so you're happy if I put my cup here, but if I put my cup over here, you're not happy? She's going to be like, no, I'm not happy. I'm like, well, do you think you could let this go? Could you allow me to just put this cup here and maybe let go out of your mind, so that way you can be happy if I put my cup here, and you can be happy if I put my cup here, right? So there's ways to talk people through it, but you don't necessarily know how to do this, because you need to be loving and kind when you're doing these kinds of things. If you just put things all over the house and could care less how other people interact in that situation, you're not practicing loving kindness and compassion. So I would say, based on what I know so far in spending time with you, I don't suggest you go out and do these kinds of things, because I remember when you were here last year, you were doing some things and it doesn't come off in the way that I would teach you to do it. So maybe we talk more privately about these things, and I can give you pointers of how to do these things in a wise way that will be helpful and come from loving kindness and compassion, and you'll have better success with it that way. Yep. Okay. So it's now 10:40. This is a great time for us to take our first break. When we come back from our break, I'm going to teach you guys this next topic, which is called identifying cravings, cultivating non-craving and analysis of the mind. This is where I'm going to teach you how to go in and almost surgically remove some of your cravings, desires, attachments, because as you guys learned yesterday, that's what's causing the discontentedness. And just like I was kind of giving you some examples here of how to help other people eliminate their cravings, desires, attachments, there's things that you can do for yourself. And you'd like to actually start with this to be able to understand how to almost surgically go in and eliminate these. So I'm going to start back up at 11 o'clock, which is about 15, 20 minutes from now. So enjoy your break, and I'll see you guys then. Okay? So thank you guys for your questions. Mm-hmm.